Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth and myth means fake imagination or connotations are ancient history which cannot be proven. And so Sattology means science of truth and it's a true antonym of mythology which means a science of fake imagination or a lie. So on this show today we have a very special guest, a great friend and a very popular author. And he's also a very famous TV personality. He's on practically every show in India on major issues. So we're going to learn from him the different aspects how India sees it, and so that we can present it.
I'm on recording. I'll call you later.
So thank you for joining, and without delay, let us welcome Sri Ratan Sharda ji.
Hello, namaskar.
Namaskar. So last few weeks have been very instrumental. India's vaccine diplomacy and also India showed military muscle in last few months, and I'm sure that it was very beautifully, I would say, very widely represented by India, despite global times shouting on it. And also, so what is India's perception of the ceasefire according to you?
We should call it ceasefire. Namaskar, first of all, Aditya. I just start speaking. Very sorry. So good to be back on the show, and thanks for calling again. Coming to this issue of China ceasefire, it's not a ceasefire because there was no war, there was no battle. It was a eye-to-eye confrontation. China, true to itself for last so many years, trying to threaten neighbors, bullying them, trying to take over some territories, some other, whether it's these are submerged islands somewhere in the Indochina, somewhere in the South China Seas, or it is some land in India, because the things we are talking about between 62 to this year, they had already gobbled up some 850 or so square kilometers of land during last 40 years. But at that time, India was quiet. It just thought that, battle is not good, firing is not good. So they said for 45 years, we had no fire on the border. But ultimately, only India paid the price, whether it's 1962 or some other incursions across the border, right from Jammu Kashmir to Ladakh to area around Sikkim and other areas around that. So with this background, this incursion of theirs in very sensitive areas of Indochina border was something that they had not responded in that way at all for so many years. We did suffer initial setback, but the way we responded and the way we responded to the uncalled for aggression by China and uncalled for effort to grab land has really put China in a quandary. Because though they thought that India will keep quiet, they had thought for so many years India has kept quiet like a good boy and let territory go and let them be bullied. But this time the government had changed. The way it had changed was something they had not expected. So this sudden change in stance made them think, they thought that eye-to-eye confrontation will, calm down India, they will go back. So they tried all kind of bullying, mounting huge pressure by bringing in various kind of armaments, huge number of thousands of Chinese soldiers. But they did not know the times had changed. We had better facilities, we had better roads, and that exactly is the reason China is rattled. Because China, there is a famous speech in Lok Sabha where the ex-defense minister has said that we have not developed the border infrastructure because if we develop it, China may take over and use it. So this kind of very timid approach to the approach today. So when India started building infrastructure, China was naturally rattled. So it wanted to bring pressure on India. That pressure, unfortunately for them, didn't work. So finally, they had to agree to this reverting to the old positions, which they thought we will not do. And that is the reason after 20 rounds or talks or so, finally they had to relent and they had to simultaneously withdraw the forces and also bring down the numbers. The nature of PLA forces, which are bound to live in luxury and who have one family, one child kind of concept where they have not faced any difficulty in their life, vis-a-vis hardened soldiers of India, is something that they had not really, they were not ready for. And then they realized that it is a army which is fighting against an enemy which is very weak. The Chinese army is actually very weak. As I had explained earlier on, since 1962, Chinese PL has not won a single war. In between, if they gained a couple of advantage points, they were because they caught the enemy unprepared. But otherwise, all these years, they have not fought any war. They have not won any war, while India has gone through many wars and won all the wars. Even one attempt they did in Nathula failed very badly. Knowing this, they still tried the adventure and they failed. India doesn't want war. India wants peace and it wants to concentrate on its development. But this particular episode has shown China its weak spot. World has seen that China is something who can bully only the weak. And if you stand up, they'll have to bend down. And that is the reason China did bend down and it never happened in India's history, at least after independence, that China had to withdraw. So this approach has really strengthened our global image. It has strengthened our own resolve, and it also weakened China's stand as the superpower or something like, aspiring power in the world, because it has shown the hollowness of their army and their PLA. And this must be understood. And this is why these withdrawals very important. Reverting to their old position is very important. And I hope that China will not think of any new adventure, because it will further damage its own reputation.
One of the things you very correctly mentioned about China is that there's a big misconception in the US. And I was writing an article for a local Indian newspaper where I was analyzing that in 1959, China acquired Tibet. Tibet was not a Chinese territory until 1950, actually. They started 50, but 59, they completely acquired it. And that time, publicly, it was known that Tibet is an independent country or northern part of India. Like generally, it was an impression. And because of the cultural connections, and it is American foolishness also, State Department's foolishness also, that they ignored from 1959 until 2007, when Chinese became the largest holders of American debt. They surpassed Japan for the first time. Now, so it's big ignoring, but this incident in Ladakh has shown to the world the chinks in Chinese armor, that most of their, and it has been very favorably reported in the strategic journals in the US, that how India outsmarted them in the entire area. But still, since 2004, Chinese acquired almost 1,000 square kilometers of area.
Yes.
In Depsang area, 1,000 square kilometers they've acquired. And they fortified it to a large extent. That is in addition to Aksai Chin, which India calls it, is a occupied territory by China. But there has been no effort to, is there an effort to take that back, or because negotiations won't yield anything with Chinese. Chinese understand hard negotiation, where like in Ladakh, India acquired a hill which put them in disadvantage. They immediately came for negotiation.
Not just one, many hilltops. It was not just one, it was many hilltops.
Yeah.
And they had a very dominating position in the hills, the mountain tops, and that is what unnerved China. And it was a speed and surprise that really surprised the Chinese horribly. I mean, they were not ready for this kind of speed and agility of Indian forces. They were totally caught flat-footed.
So China understands that language. Do you think that India can use that? Because this has come in most of the military case studies now. This year, Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict and Indo-China conflict in Ladakh. These two are the major case studies for this year, in which the use of technology and also use of fast maneuvering by India played a very important role. So do you think that something else can be done? Because the whole Tibet, because if India doesn't question the Tibet, then they're going to keep on acquiring, pressurizing India and Arunachal Pradesh and other parts of India. So do you think that strategy is there, or what is your view on that?
See, I had in fact reviewed and read the book of Subramanian Swamy recently about Himalayan challenge, which specifically talks about the challenge of normalizing of relations between India and China. And he points at the central point of this entire conflict or entire friction is Tibet. And this issue is because neither China wants to have a very clear way, it enjoys the obfuscation of confusion on the borders between India and China. It enjoys the benefit of confusion in India about Tibet. So unless we have very clear strategic vision about Tibet and China understands that India will no more be bullied, so they will have to come on the negotiation table. To think that if Tibet can become independent, I think that is not the right thinking. But Tibet has to gain its autonomy. It has to gain its autonomy from China. And at the same time, India has to understand that they have not agreed once but twice that Tibet is part of China and they didn't do anything about it. And there are historic factors which we simply don't want to look at, whether it's Indo-China border, whether it's Tibet. So unless both the sides are ready to talk, you come down to brass tacks and to come down to some understanding about the clarity of this border area's history and also of Tibet, we will keep on prevaricating and keep on dragging the issue. But for this, China has to come down from the high horse. I hope this last confrontation will bring them on a ground of reality and they will be ready to talk. And we also in India need to have much more clearer thinking what we are going to speak about Tibet or about the border areas. So it's not simple. It may not happen very soon. But once China realizes that it needs India as much as India needs China, and they had been living happily for 2,500 years, and in fact, China was Sanskritized or converted to Buddhism and Hindu belief without any confrontation for thousands of years, is a lesson for China to learn. We never tried to win them over with the wars. We won them over with philosophy, and they very happily accepted it. And they had a great tradition and civilization now. So two old civilizations need to come back to their original stand. For that, this Communist Party has to go probably, and Z has to go. Unless that happens, the spirit of confrontation will not go. So we may speak about the glorious traditions and culture, but ultimately on the ground, Z has to understand that this grandstanding will not help him. It will further erode his reputation, and that is what he fears. So they have to come down to ground and talk about it. Only then something will be resolved. War is not the solution because it will be a very long war, and China may not be able to withstand initially, but over the long period, what happens we do not know. And at the same time, China's continuous effort to encircle India through, as they call string of pearls, etc., surrounding India, India is responding to it. So Quad is one of the way of responding to China's effort at hegemony of this entire area, which will not succeed because all the neighbors of China are very irritated, very upset. So India has given a lead, and that is what it is supposed to do. So India is not aspiring for any leadership position the way people look at it, but it is aspiring to have a cooperative feeling around Indo-China area and Indo-Pacific area, and then only talk of other things. So this is the background to this entire situation, and China will have to overcome its expansionist ideas. It has wonderful economic expansionism, which is controlling nearly all the economies of the world. To go beyond that and try to control it militarily is a dream which will never succeed.
While this conflict was going on, and I think this is the first time we are hearing from you on this in such a detailed way. Now, India showed the militarily, like it is very, in a way, came out very positive, even in American circles now.
Mm-hmm.
And also the first time Americans also realized that Indian forces are a force to reckon with. India is the largest.
No, that I think that is because India, US had a jaundiced view. It found Pakistan to be alive, which is very foolish. But I mean, it's a strong word, but that it was because they simply refused to look at India. If you look at India's history, military history, except 1962, everywhere India has shown extremely innovative way to combat the worst kind of enemy, the worst, what we can say shortage of arms or weakness in terms of kind of Air Force planes we had. But every time India had that innate spirit of innovation where it fought back. And from the position of weakness also is proved to be so successful in defeating Pakistan on both the fronts, 1971 as well as 1965-71. And USA knew that its threat about 1971 didn't work, and they hated India for that. It is thanks to the new diplomacy that the US picked up later on after 1990s, the situation has changed drastically. So this old establishment thinking of America of balancing China, sorry, Pakistan and India has failed. They realize that. They realize India is too big and too strong to be compared with the client state, which was first client to USA with, on debt and all. Later became client state to China. So having become client state to China, for US it's of no use, honestly. And so there has been a long history of India's excellent view of maneuvering its own weakness into strength, which the military powers of USA should have lived, which the international diplomatic community sitting in USA should have looked at. Luckily, they have started realizing after 1990s, and slowly we have come to a situation that India and US are now very close allies as equal partners, not as client state or whatever. And India has its own independent foreign policy, independent world strategic thinking. But at the same time, there are a lot of things common which US has realized now that two democracies can work together, but one banana republic or a military regime cannot work on the same footing. And having Pakistan having lost itself to China, America will have to find a way where it can counter, and that is why its strategy on Quad, where even after change in government, the US admin has not changed at all. That shows the maturity of the US state. It shows the maturity of the US and India relationship. That despite all this, now we have come to a stage where we trust each other, and we know that to counter this Chinese hegemony, whether it's economic, whether it's military, there is no other way but to come together and see to it that they are contained in their own area. They can trade with the world, they can work with the world, but not as a military and economic goal.
During this entire crisis, I was seeing the report, recently pushed out. China exported more than $60 billion worth of goods during this entire crisis period, and India imported it. And there was a trade surplus maintained by China by almost $37 billion, US billion dollars. So at the same time, India was, resisting their attack, but while at the same time promoting their imports. And so, do you think that was wise on part of India, or do you think cannot be avoided?
No. The last report I read, Aditya, was that India's import from China has decreased drastically. You cannot cut off a tap at a single stroke because there are a lot of industry which are highly dependent on China. But whether we need to have toys from China, whether we need to have cold drinks or any other kind of items from China, or some handicrafts or textile, etc. But it will take time for Indian industry to be what we call Atmanirbhar or self-reliant, to move out of China's control of the export that India does. From a manufacturing industry in the name of open trade, many of our businesses become trading partners. So they stopped manufacturing, they just simply started importing and selling. So to change this to a new scenario, like mobile has come in a big way, mobile manufacturing in India. There are a lot of companies from Japan and Korea who wish to move to India from China. So slowly we will come back to the manufacturing strength that we lost during a few years in the name of open trade. And then you will realize it is not that we simply want to boycott China. We want to remove the dependence on China. We want China to show that as far as we require, they require us more, because their economy, their wealth depends on exports to big countries like China, India and America. So once they realize this, then we can work as equal partners. But there is no way with this government that we will give manufacturing. We will keep on increasing capabilities, and we will keep on slowly bringing up the capacity to manufacture efficiently. And for that, it will take little time. We simply cannot cut off the pipe. So the trade deficit reduced, imports reduced, and it should become only imports for essentials. And then slowly we will move into directions where we can, for example, APIs for pharma industry. I think nearly 65% are imported from China. This dependency has to go. So slowly it will go. It cannot go overnight. So a lot of other things where we can do better, and we will slowly overcome the kind of inefficiency we built in because we started depending on Chinese goods. For example, FMCG goods, for example, white goods, where we don't really need Chinese expertise, but we need better manufacturing efficiency, which will get built in, and we will recover from that. And there is no effort to, promote China at all, because Huawei, their biggest bet for which China is crying, we have removed it. Mukesh Ambani has come with a Jio 5G, which is not a single component of China. So once we decide, India has huge talent. Once we decide within next 5 years, 6 years, you'll find huge changes, and you'll find that China will have to come back to our terms to trade with India.
So one of the biggest American State Department follies, I can say, has been to play on both sides with China. One side they promote one China policy with Chinese mainland. On the other side, they're playing with Taiwan, and Taiwan is a new buzzword, and they want to declare Taiwan, recognize Taiwan officially. But India has not taken those stands. Do you think what is the reason for that?
See, Indian policy, foreign policy has evolved during last 5 6 years in a big way. It has slowly become highly evolved as per its own self interest, as per its own global aspirations, I would say. So slowly, things which were there in the foreign policy department in India, which was so timid and still tuned to Cold War thinking, has been changing a lot under the leadership of the PM Modi. But there are some areas which will need some more fine tuning, and it will happen. But to say that we will do what US are doing is not possible, because we have our own self interest, we have our own thinking, and naturally we would be aligned to see that Taiwan is not gobbled up by China. At the same time, our foreign policy will be evolving over a period of time further. But to say that we will follow US's steps as soon as USA takes some steps, that is the difference. As I said, that we are independent country with our own clear vision, and this change in the way we look at the world and the way we deal with the world has changed tremendously in the last 6 years. It will change further. So you will have to keep waiting and watching what happens, and you will find that still more things will come out. You saw the way the foreign minister responded to the Western idea of demonizing India. So we have totally changed. We are no more apologetic about what we are. We don't want to talk about equidistance. We want to speak about multipolarity. We want to speak about equal respect for all and equal beneficial ties which are good to everybody. And for other countries to still demonize India, while India served vaccines to 71 countries, millions of doses, and for countries who say only we will first have these vaccines for us than for anybody else while the world cries. So we see India's role has emerged as one of the most compassionate country as it was in the earlier times. So you will find more changes, and then the globe is realizing it definitely. But there are some old new left thinking people who are trying to somehow demonize India under the influence of neo left and other forces. But we don't. It is simply that we are very confident of us. We don't need other certificates. That is sure. If somebody comments, fine. If somebody doesn't, we are fine.
You brought out some very important point. I think one of the things which India is definitely being very assertive, and just a hypothetical question, academic question: when will India come out of British Commonwealth?
See, Commonwealth itself is a strange legacy. In fact, I always think that's a totally wasteful club. A club where the ex-slaves still believe that they are together, so they are happily celebrating their slavish past. There is no need for Commonwealth to exist. So I think it will wither away on its own. As a sporting club, 20 countries coming, playing it together, it's fine. But then, what is the political significance? Nothing but a reminder of old slavery, of colonialism, of exploitation. So at that time, maybe there were leaders who thought that we should be still living peacefully with the great United Kingdom. But I think it will change, and the hollowness of this club is something that is, I would say, amusing. It is worse than what UNO is today, because at least UNO had a global vision which has failed it, and it has to be reinvented. As Mr. Modi says many times, it cannot be an exclusive club of 5 or 6 countries while others simply come and make some speeches and go home. So it has to expand. It has to give space to the new countries emerging from the changing world environment. And then only UNO can become useful. So these global bodies, which are born after World War II, have to change according to the way the world has changed. Unless that is done, these will just become different bodies where some people are happily drawing very good salaries.
British Commonwealth, India pays almost like $21 million a year to be a member, and which is a big, it's a taxpayers' money. And
I'm curious to know, where does the money go? I'm very curious to know what happens? Why money? Why this Commonwealth label needs so much of money? That's an amusing, thing that I would like to know. But then, well, it's an old legacy, as it will die its own death. And there are countries who are happy, like Australia, New Zealand, seem to be very happy to be still under the flag of the Queen. That's their wish. But as the countries have been exploited hugely, and from a country which saw to the death of millions due to their own policies, I think this is something that can be easily taken away without any bitterness. Time is over. There are some things that happen over time, and they have no value now. So it's okay, fine to have some bonhomie, come together, have some wine and some dinner. But then beyond that, what is served? There are hundreds of other countries. Like for example, India has given so much of focus to China, to African countries, and brought them together. They cooperated together. These are the new relations that need to be nurtured, not the old foggy relations which have only a past but no future. Unless it becomes an economic bloc, I see nothing of the sort so far.
For Canada, Australia, and New Zealand doesn't matter because they are the Queen's backyard. But for
It's
India,
their life. I mean, we can't, really question their own loyalty or their own wish to be in the same club. And they have not seen the kind of exploitation we saw. Of course, they also were exploited, but their natives were exploited more. They were oppressed more. As far as people living there now, the people who migrated to Canada and they have same stocks, they came from some past which they don't mind to have to still share with the UK. But for us, other countries who are not part of that aggressive races who went out and conquered the local natives and killed and pillaged them, we have a different thinking. It's a
no,
past. I don't know to rake it now, but we should be clear that their background is different. So we can't really compare what a Canada does or Australia does. As I said, their history is different from ours.
can Modi ji ask Boris Johnson and declare it boldly that we are no longer part of Commonwealth today onwards?
Well, it's not a priority. It's not a priority at all. As I said, it will wither away.
No,
There
with the
is no
British
need to,
Parliament, with the
have any
British,
aggressive stance on that because we are not enemies. It is just that, it will wither away when institution, has beyond the expiry date. It has to wither away.
no, with the
If
British
UNO is
Parliament,
in a position that, if UN is in a position where it is losing relevance and still not ready to reinvent itself, which is not even legacy of colonialism or exploitation, then where is Commonwealth?
with the British Parliament passing resolutions and against Indian farm, looks like the British Parliament is thinking more about India than their own country. So,
See, what can British Parliament do? Who are the people who brought the resolution? Who are ex-Indian origin?
correct.
It's Indian. This British Parliament tradition. They just allowed it, but there are people who responded to very aggressively, and they are UK citizens, original UK citizens. Why it's the local British compared to the settlers who went there? So, I mean, I think British government, British politicians know that this is not the correct way to approach India. But then there are some expats who have their own vested interests, who are earning good money out of this kind of lobbying and having wonderful life, and they have vested interests. So we can't really say that British are against India. I think that would be wrong notion. It is just that there are few people, unhappy souls who are selling their unhappiness to make some money and get center stage. So I would not give too much of importance to this. But yes, if it were India, maybe Indian Parliament would disallowed such a debate. But British has its own traditions, and I think we should not overreact to it because we know who are the people who are behind this kind of sacrilege in the British Parliament. And yes, we should object, and we objected, but we should not hype it up too much because the way we have objected. I told them it's our business, not your business. But same UK, you had this Rashmi Sawant, wonderful Indian woman who won the first woman to become Oxford University chairperson, and she was made to resign with huge pressure from the left forces and neo-left forces, which can't stand any Hindu taking a leading position, and nobody reacted. None in UK, no politician, no so-called very powerful politicians who stood up in Parliament talked about it. It's a shame on the whole academic world of UK. It's also a shame on the local politicians who refuse to stand up for that girl. And that is my worry, that this kind of bullying happens just because you are a Hindu. And this Hindu phobic nature and Hindu hate nature of narrative that is set by neo-left and is aided by Islamic forces is something that needs to be taken seriously, because Britain has faced enough from the Islamist forces. It has tried for 30 years to tame them with so-called de-radicalization. It has not worked. And to alienate a very wonderful community which has always cooperated with the local community, with the local country, and contribute to the wealth and well-being of that particular country, to not stand up for those people who are totally non-aggressive. Hindus are known as non-aggressive, always reformist, and always happy to have peace around with the place where they are. And they have always supported the local civilization and local cultures. For them to be demonized, who respect all of the religions, is something that has to stop. And Rashmi Samant is just one more story which the British have to understand, and even US has to understand, that we are the most cooperative and the most globally global citizens who believe in that India is one, world is one family, and they behave accordingly. So this narrative against Hindus just because they are tolerant has to stop. If they don't understand Hinduism, they should try to understand. If they want to learn, they will learn. But this blind hate is something that hurts everybody, and that is my problem, not some small debate in British Parliament.
Coming to US back, and one question has come to the audience, is that American State Department has played on both sides with China, Taiwan as well as mainland China. With India also, American State Department has played with Pakistan as well as India. But American trade has always increased with China, and same is with India also. And but one thing is, and this is asked by Indian American, whichever country Americans have sold their weapons to, they fought against them in the future. It is a history of America arms. They sold weapons to Iran, they fought against them. Iraq, they fought against them. The China, Pakistan, they regularly bomb them, even today. Biden has restarted that, so they're going to regularly bomb it. And wherever they have not sold their weapons, they've never fought with. So what is going to be the future of Indo-American defense cooperation if any administration changes?
See, the very change of a very different volatile President Trump to a very different pro-left president now, we have seen no change in the policy. So US state as such has very stable policy because it has matured over the last 20 years. As if from 1990s, the relation between India, China and USA has prospered in a way that was not foreseen till that time. Whichever president, whether Democrat or Republican, you have seen that all of them have have wonderful relations with India. Trust has been built up. So change in the party, governing party in USA will not affect the Indo-American relations at all. That's my belief. There may be small tweaking because it's in the interest of USA to have wonderful, good relations with India. They will gain more by having a strong partner in this area where China is trying to dominate. At the same time, see, as far as American and Chinese relations are concerned, their relations are purely transactional, purely commercial. When China was opened up to America, we know USA, we know the reasons how they took advantage of cost benefit. We also know how USA's main industry, that is defense industry, high-tech defense industry, cannot prosper, cannot create GDP unless there is some war somewhere or some conflict somewhere. So they can sell to both the sides. That's a different story. But that is very different from how India behaves with its neighbors, with its partners. So we can't really compare the two. This urge to this strong arms lobby is something that we have to worry about, just like the strong military lobby in Pakistan. But then there are two industries which try to change the discourse in the world. One is the pharma industry, one is the defense industry. But India doesn't work on that line. India wanted to be self-reliant in defense production. Slowly it is becoming self-reliant. It will take a lot of time, but still very big sectors have been open to the private investment. And it will be in the interest of the US to get into those partnerships. But to say that what USA does today, as I said earlier, that India will follow, it's not really a necessary condition. It will not happen. It depends on its own self-interest. And the remote wars that USA plays, very funny that President Trump, who has been demonized in a big way, his biggest success of foreign policy, and we thought he's a dudder, he doesn't know how to deal with foreign countries. So this this unpredictable nature of Mr. Trump, which got Islamic countries to be friends with Israel, under whom there was no wars. In fact, wars were de-escalated. So that lesson has to be learned, that USA needs to come out of its totally commercial transactional way of working. And it has given up its global COP role, which is very good. But at the same time, as a strong economic and military power, it has to see to it that it believes in a more transparent, more trustworthy manner. And people should not feel that it's dealing in one way and in Taiwan and one way in mainland China, as you pointed out. So there is more trust among the countries when they deal with the USA.
Thank you for such a great reply. I think it's a good analysis on it, and also very diplomatic also. But one last question, and I think we did a World Series on this one. And for viewers who are doing this, you can ask questions on YouTube channel also when it goes live, probably tomorrow. And one last question on the US-India relationships, the Hindu phobia. The word was, I think it was first reported by Rajiv Malhotra ji, and it is a very rampant in many universities
That book
across.
is behind me on my shelf.
It was rampant in the US in many forums, public forums, especially big universities. But there is no opposition by the Ministry of Education of India or Ministry of Culture or Foreign Relations Office on this discrimination faced by Indians in the US or in UK also, but US primarily I'll talk about. So why do you think so? Why this has not come out?
Well, though I'm supporter of this government, though I'm hardcore supporter of Mr. Modi and also BJP, I have fought their battles on media at various times. And was sorry to state that first of all, we have to put our own house in order in India. In last 6 years, we hardly progressed anywhere to control this neo-left, control this Maoist way of looking at our history, our education, and totally dehumanizing education and creating an amoral model where the youth comes up with no ideas, no values, no understanding of our past or our present or our culture. So with this kind of education that we have not been able to handle, to believe that we will be interfering or we will be, putting ourselves in a position to control the narrative in USA by pointing out this hate propaganda of the academics would be a tall order. It's not a very good positive statement, but since you asked me, I'll be honest. I think Indians in USA are much more tuned to fight this academic battle. Mr. Rajiv Malhotra has opened the gates. He was the first one to blow the bugle of confrontation with these people at a very huge cost to himself and also the effort he put in. And now there is huge lobby coming up. Huge number of Indians are ready to take this battle into the enemy camp, to so to say, ideological enemies. And they will need time because these forces entrench them so well. Like we have these forces in our own academic world and media world. In USA, in entire academic world, you will find that these forces have entrenched themselves so well. They also change sides. First, they took support from the church and from multinationals. They sang a different tune. Now they are taking support from Islamic lobbies. That tune has changed. But for both of them, Hinduism is a enemy. I don't know why, because I believe the inclusive nature of Hindu Dharma, which will stop the kind of exclusivist thinking that these religions and these ideologies have, is what they fear, because they want to have this one-sided affair where they will overcome this world either with a red flag or with a green flag. And that is the reason they find a common enemy in Hindu Dharma, because that is the only philosophy which is totally in variance with what they think. Exclusivist lobbies versus inclusivist Hindu Dharma. A Hindu Dharma which talks of taking along everybody with due respect of everybody, vis-a-vis that I am the greatest, my God is the greatest, one who doesn't follow my God or my religion is a kafir or a fallen or non-believer, sinful person who has to be brought back to our fold so that they will go to heaven and not go to hell. This kind of approach, intolerant approach to other religions and cultures, whether they are Hindu Dharma or whether native religions or pagan religions, we call them insulting way, whether it's African or European or US cultures. So till we come to this understanding, because this only way this will happen is with the lead of Hindu Dharma. That is the reason it's being attacked, because of its syncretic nature. which doesn't suit them. So this once we understand this, then slowly the wheel will turn, and it has started turning. But of course, the forces are very vicious. But as you see, that more and more academics will have to stand up. They are slowly standing up. There was nobody earlier who dared to speak for Hindu Dharma in USA. That has changed. There are a lot more people ready to write and speak about it in the manner that USA understands, and that is very important. And that is what has happened now. For example, Rutgers University had to apologize to Hindu students for the strange, hateful, or bigot history that Audrey Tushke wants to tell us. And of course, they still claim that it's academic freedom, but academic freedom does not mean selling fiction. Then Audrey could be a fiction writer, because all the history so far narrated by various historians, including own Mughal historians, clearly shows the kind of atrocities Hindus faced in their times and kind of destruction of Hindu temples. For some lady to find out some small sentence and say this is the academic truth is not the way academics can do. Either it is a comparative study or it has to be referred properly. And you cannot make extreme, hateful, and bigot statements like Lord Ram was a MCP, etc., without any fig of evidence. So this fiction writing in the name of academics must also be answered. And now, because the students stood up, Rutgers University had to respond. So I think this is a very positive sign, and that is the way to fight on this battlefront. But I'm sorry that I don't expect any big interjection from Indian government side, and I don't even think it's required, because you people there are strong enough, are so well endowed with wealth and influence and also knowledge, that this is a battle. If you win there, it is much more easier for every other nation, every other country to fight back this colonial thought process, whether it's Africa or this the old civilizations of Europe or Arabian. So you will be the epicenter of this change.
Great point. And I think one thing has really come up, that since 2014, Indian mindset has really changed. And I think without the government, like for Pakistan and China, is there governments who work in the US for changing the perception. Indian government has not interfered at all with the people. I can say that for sure, being an Indian American myself. And it's just the awareness.
And just to say, I'm sorry, I mean, I don't even want Indian government to, get into this act. It should act in a way which is diplomatically correct, but it is for the Hindus to fight back and create the right picture. In that sense, wherever Indian government can help in terms of lobbying, in terms of presenting the point of view and putting pressure, fine, they should do it. But ultimately, it's a battle at the academic level, at the political level, where being there in a strong position should be till the Hindus realize, Indians realize that they are in a strong position. They have wonderful goodwill in America because of the way it has worked so far to enrich the country, to produce the wonderful leadership there, to provide right kind of academic, support with teachers and professors and medical field, anywhere you go. So if that is the strength, that strength has to be presented well and made your point. And Indian government's role can be only peripheral, because their first focus should be, I do hope that in the next couple of years, we also see huge change in academic world in India also.
I do hope that, and also President Biden openly said it, that Indian Americans are surrounding him on all sides, including his vice president.
Yes.
And but nonetheless, I mean, yoga, meditation, and vegetarianism are the gifts of India to US, and I think which 50 million Americans practice today. 50 million Americans.
Even today, as you rightly would know, that entire AI field, entire IT field, entire domination that US has in technology is fueled by Indians.
Right. And there are attempts by some other groups, out of just pure enviousness of Hindus, particularly religion-based enviousness or cultural-based enviousness, that they are still doing their own propaganda, but I'm sure they're going to fail. And many of my American students are laughing.
The thing is very simple. Our philosophy is so comprehensive and so complex. It is suitable for anybody from any kind of mindset, any kind of intellect, right from simple Murti Puja to very complex, Upanishadic thoughts and Vedanta and the Vedas. that either anybody can fit in, or persons are born on the simple concept of sin and pap and punya and swarg and narak, hell and heaven, and fruit of sin, etc. For them to understand it's a bit difficult. So they find it so complex that the only way they can fight is demonize us. So we have to present the concepts in much more simpler terms that they will appreciate and understand.
That's what our attempt is. And thank you all of you for joining and also making the Hindu Bible, which I wrote, one of the best sellers on Amazon. Thank you
Oh,
all
that's
for doing
wonderful.
it. And
Thank you.
Indians did not like the word. I can tell you, all of you are watching it. Indians did not like the word Hindu Bible, but you understand it's a Bhagavad Gita in a new name. So thank you all very much for joining, and thank you Ratanji for
Thanks,
joining.
Aditya.
Namaskar. It's a great.